So I'm sure by now it's no secret that in Die Maschine in Cold War Zombies lies a giant secret monster. A mysterious creature that only appears on the map in the Dark Aether at round 40. And as it stands, we don't know too much about this creature. Now, I know I'm not the first person to talk about the giant monster, but today reveals new secrets about this monster. As with today's pre-season 1 update for Cold War, they've added new Easter eggs into Cold War Zombies. And it reveals some brand new secrets that we didn't know before about this giant monster, which has previously never been discovered before. This is easily going to be one of the best looks you've seen yet at this monster, so I highly advise you watch the video through to the end. And if you do enjoy it, feel free to leave a like rating and subscribe to the channel if you're new, because we post a lot of Cold War Zombies around here and I'd hate for you to miss out. So wasting no time at all, let's catch you up to speed on this for anyone who's a little out of the loop with this. This is a giant monster that can only be seen on Die Maschine at round 40 onwards outside of the map near Quick Revive. It's very much one of those, if you're not there at the right time, you simply won't see it. And this is why we've pulled out all the stops in this video to get you the best look at this thing, because normally there is just not a lot of detail you can make out. So this is what the monster looks like if you take his model straight out of the game. He is completely untextured apart from his arm, and that's because you see it from such a far distance that there's just no need for textures. But regardless of texture, there's a lot of detail on this thing, and it's really telling of what exactly this monster is. So it has a few names, you know, giant monster, elder god, that we'll get onto in a moment, but internally Treyarch call this the hulking summoner, and for good reason, because when you hear a name like that, you can't help but get some shivers down your spine. Now, I did say a little early in the intro that we are going to go far in depth than anyone else has done yet on this thing, and we're going to get an in-depth look at this thing if it was fully textured. I gotta say a massive shout out to my friend Ripley Games for helping me out with this. She is an absolute god who's gone ahead and textured this monster entirely from his arm texture, so you can see what this thing truly looks like, and the detail is horrifying. So we're going to start with the bottom of its legs, and if you couldn't work out already, its legs are made entirely from the flesh of several different bodies. I assume they're human, and we'll get into the lore of the Dark Aether in a moment that will explain why I think this is the case, but that is absolutely disgusting. This thing is a massive walking hunk of several bodies, and the first thing that I think of when I see this is the Panzer Mortar from Call of Duty WW2 Zombies. There is a lot of discussion and speculation on exactly who created parts of Black Ops Cold War. Potentially Sledgehammer Games were working on the zombies for a bit, and that's why this has such a Panzer Mortar look to it. But from my understanding, this thing eats up people that are trapped in the Dark Aether. And from pure speculation as to why, you can imagine that something this big is only consuming more people so that it becomes bigger and bigger and stronger. If we take a look at this shot here holding poor Helen Park, let's hope this doesn't happen to her in the future, you can see the arm that we see from the legendary upgrade Easter egg is indeed the same arm from this monster. As for its upper body, you can see that its head is completely missing from where it should be. His head is actually attached to his left arm, which is absolutely grim. Now let's break down what we know about this monster so far, and also the new things we've learned today. In the preseason intel, we learned that there's a stranger writing diary entries which are being received by us from the Dark Aether. And this is here that we learn crucial information about these giant monsters. Backing up our theory, he mentions on day 175 that there are others here trapped like him, with creatures prowling the place, so he avoids them too. But it's on day 1646 that we learn our first clues about this monster, where he says he saw something new today, something big, tall as a building, walking through fog, difficult to see details. He kept his distance as it passed, and he heard talk from others that giants roam this land but dismissed it as madness. Heard one of them call them elder gods. Though I catalogued all creatures here and their pecking order, I was wrong. A lot of you are very familiar with that intel, and you're very familiar with the words elder gods. So rounding up what we've known so far is on day 3289, where he says the longer he's there, the fewer creatures pursue him. He still sees these creatures take down newcomers, but they tend to ignore him for some reason. But unfortunately, more powerful creatures seem to have taken notice. This is where things get incredibly interesting. So we've seen the giant monster. We know there are many giant monsters, but we learn on day day 4100 that he's learned about a powerful overlord. Day 4100 found one of the big ones dead today. Had the impression they left each other alone, but it was clear from wounds they fight among themselves. There is talk here that one of the overlords is hunting the rest. Sounded like crazy talk, especially because some now worship the giants, but I have seen enough to believe it. If one of the giants is imposing its will on the rest, I shudder to think what new order may emerge. Now, I know in the last week or so, a pretty popular theory by Mr. Rufflewaffles was that this monster could be called Chernabog, and that's due to the plane wing in the crash site mentioning this name. And Chernabog is a Slavic deity whose name means black god, with the only historical sources, which are Christian ones, interpret him as a dark, accursed god. But it's questionable how important or evil he was really considered to be by ancient Slavs. Now, I fully support this theory, but I'd love to throw another coin into the hat on what this could be. Now, from the first look we've ever had at Die Maschine, we could see on the staircase in Nackda and Toten, there is a mention that the accursed one will rise again. We've been scratching our heads ever since, wondering what exactly this could mean. Taking this context, this could work in very well with the idea of Chernabog. Similarly, there is also another popular theory in the community which I really like the sound of, and it would make a lot of sense because if we look back at what Craig Houston said during our first look, he said, "Don't be surprised if some things just don't want to stay dead." And one of the main antagonists in our old zombie storyline is, of course, Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man. After the ending of Tag der Toten, they were banished to the Dark Aether, and that's where they belong for all we know. Now, I think it would be really cheap of Treyarch to bring both these characters back as they were without any consequences or changes to their character. And the main theory is when you look back at all of the history of the Apophicons and the Keepers and Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man, they were originally the same being. Dr. Monty gives a fantastic quote in Revelations about when you cut a worm in half, which part is the head and which part is the bottom, and how they are different parts, but they're from the same thing. And the theory is originally Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man were the same person. I mean, they were both the same race, just the Shadow Man was corrupted. And over eons, that race morphed with the Dark Aether to become the Apophicons. Now, I'm not saying that the Apophicons and the Keepers are going to come back, but it seems there is a new order being created. This new race of these giant abominations, and they are following the lead of one particular overlord. And whilst we're in a new storyline, this is the Dark Aether storyline we're talking about here, and those things still belong in the Dark Aether, which means there is every right that they could be written back somehow into our storyline. And Treyarch could spin the story of Chernabog to be an interpreted version of what Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man have now become. Because if not, there is some ultimate overlord foreseeing all of this race of giants, and I couldn't think of anyone else that it could be apart from an abomination that consists of Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man, because in the storyline of Aether, a being known as the First One created life as we know it in that zombies universe. And the staircase says the Accursed One, which means something or someone that's under a curse. So for all we know, this overlord could have genuinely been a good person to start with, and the Dark Aether has corrupted them into this accursed version of themselves that's now leading this army of giant monsters. But we are not done there yet, ladies and gentlemen, as with season 1, we also get 5 new Dark Aether radio transmissions coming from a Russian soldier called Pyotr. I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. But there's one incredibly interesting radio log called Behemoth, where he describes a presence that is the scale of which he cannot explain.
I have not seen it, but I know it is there. I've seen the destruction left in its wake. Swaths of trees, snapped and broken as though they were twigs. It moves with purpose, but it is not a purpose I understand. I have not seen it. I hope I never do.
And to add on to that, there is another radio transmission where he heard the sound of one of these giant monsters. Let's take a listen.
I have heard its guttural roar echo through the forest like a wounded animal screaming out in pain. I I fear they are becoming an army.
Some really interesting stuff. There's two soldiers, Fritz and Pyotr, who are stuck in the Dark Aether. Both seem to be part of the same army, but separated by different time scales within the Dark Aether, and they're both experiencing some very strange things. Fritz is losing his mind, whilst Pyotr can't work out where the rest of his army have been because they only entered the Dark Aether a week earlier than him, so he can't understand where they are. But things in the storyline are getting very, very interesting, and I can only imagine with the next few days and weeks to come, there's going to be even more to learn. And there's more season 1 intel we've not even gone through yet in this video. If you guys want me to break more intel down for you guys in future videos, let me know in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on all of this stuff, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to drop a thumbs up on the video and subscribe so you don't miss out. You can check out my previous video on your screen right now, but thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate your time watching these videos, and I'll catch you hopefully for another one in the future very soon.